we're going to have story time with Jules. Today we're going to read Rapunzel. One day, a prince was riding in the forest when he heard a girl singing. He got down from his horse and led him quietly along a mossy footpath until he came to a clearing. In the clearing was a tower as round and as straight as a giant pine tree. And at the very top of the tower, which was so tall it looked as though the roof was touching the sky, there was a very tiny window. It was from the tiny window that the sound of the voice was coming. "It will be a long climb up the stairs to the top," said the prince, shading his eyes and looking upward. "But I must find out who is singing so sweetly." He looped the horse's bridle over a branch and went to look for a way in. He walked around the tower 100 times. He walked and walked. He could find no door, no window, no hidden entrance. It was impossible to climb up the outside, for the sides were so smooth there was neither a crack nor ledge where he could put his feet. In the end, the disappointed prince had to give up his quest and ride home with the sound of the voice drifting in the wind behind him. The prince could not forget the voice. He dreamed about it in his daydreams, and he dreamed about it in his sleep. He rode into the forest every day just to hear it. One day, when he was sitting in the branches of a tree closest to the tower, an old witch came out of the forest. The prince kept very quiet, and he watched to see what that ugly witch would do. She went to the foot of the tower and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately, a long braid of golden hair tumbled from the window at the top of the tower. It was so long its tip touched the ground. The old ugly witch caught hold of it as though it was a rope, and someone in the room at the very top of the tower pulled her upwards until she disappeared. The prince was so excited he almost fell out of the tree. He had waited until the old witch had come down again and hobbled away into the forest, and then he went to the foot of the tower himself. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel," he called, "let down your hair." Again, the golden hair came tumbling from the tower, but this time it was a handsome prince who used it as a rope, and not an ugly old witch. In the tiny room at the top of the tower was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Who are you?" she gasped as he climbed over the windowsill and into the room. "I thought you were the witch." "Do not be afraid," said the prince. "I will not hurt you." He told her his name and how he heard her singing when he was riding in the forest. "I sing because I am lonely," said Rapunzel. "I have been locked alone in this tower since I was 12 years old. My only visitor is the witch who brought me here." "I will help you escape," said the prince. "How can you?" sighed Rapunzel. "I cannot climb down my own hair, and there's no other way in or out of the tower." "I will bring you a silken ladder," promised the prince. That evening, the old ugly witch visited Rapunzel again. "You are much heavier than the prince," said Rapunzel, without thinking of the consequences of her word. "Why is that?" The witch was so angry she almost exploded. She had locked Rapunzel in the tower to keep her away from the handsome princes. She wanted Rapunzel to love no one in the world but herself. She snatched a pair of scissors from the table, and before Rapunzel could stop her, she had cut off her long braid of golden hair. Now your prince will never get into the tower, screamed the witch. And then, because she was very angry indeed, she banished Rapunzel to a faraway place. Even if the prince did find a way into the tower, Rapunzel would not be there. The prince had no way of knowing what had happened, of course, and the next day, when he called to Rapunzel to let down her hair, he thought it was she who threw the long golden braids over the windowsill, but it was not. It was the witch. It was the witch who pulled the prince upwards and upwards and upwards. You will never see Rapunzel again, she screamed, as the prince looked over the windowsill and straight into her ugly face. And with that terrible cry, she let go of the braids so that they and the prince fell to the ground. The prince was bumped and bruised, and when at last he stirred and opened his eyes, he could not see. He was blind. The prince thought Rapunzel was locked in the tower with the witch, and though he tried, he could find no way of helping her. He wandered about the countryside, blind, lonely, and unhappy. And then one day, just by chance, he came to a place where Rapunzel was living. He heard her singing, and though her voice was as sad as a flower without petals, he recognized it at once. Rapunzel? He called softly. Is that you? Rapunzel was overjoyed, but when she saw the prince's poor blind eyes, she wept hot, splashing tears. Some of her tears fell into the prince's face. Suddenly, he could see. Her tears had broken the witch's terrible spell. The prince and Rapunzel were married and lived happily ever after. As far as the old witch, she was never heard of or seen again. Perhaps she's still locked in that tower. Once she had let go of the braids, she had no way of getting out of the tower herself, had she? Good night, and have wonderful dreams.